Hi, this is your host Abdul Bhartiya and welcome to TFLS Talk. Today we have with us Joe Brandt, Executive Director of Open 3D Foundation. Joe, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's my pleasure to talk to you today. Before, of course, we talk about new release and other things related to this foundation. Let's just quickly get the basics done. Tell us a bit about what is the Open 3D Foundation all about.
So the Open 3D Foundation is an entity under the Linux Foundation. So we're basically a sub-foundation under that manages projects with right now the primary project being the Open 3D engine.
Can you quickly talk about your own background in the gaming space?
Yes. So the first 25 years of my career was spent working on games, primarily for Nintendo hardware. So I worked on 3 Lord of the Rings games, The Simpsons, Assassin's Creed, Age of Mythologies. I actually started with Half-Life 1. And so I'm in the credits for that. And then I moved into mobile for 4 years. So I worked on things like Dino Hunter, Deer Hunter, Adorable Battle Creatures, and a few other games. And then from there, in 2016, I joined Amazon to work on Lumberyard, and I ended up running the customer team. So we basically supported all customers that were using Lumberyard, both internal and external, including games like New World. And then I moved on to working on O3DE when that started. And by the end of my tenure in 2024 at AWS, I was managing all of the engineering efforts for the Open 3D engine. And then in March, the opportunity came up for the executive director position, and I really love O3DE, and I feel it's important. And so I decided to move from Amazon to the Linux Foundation to work on with the Open 3D Foundation.
And what is the idea behind not only Open 3D Foundation, but also Open 3D Engine?
So the Open 3D Foundation's goal is to essentially manage projects that deal with 3D visualization. And then the Open 3D engine is an engine, it's a game and simulation engine that is completely open sourced and under the Apache 2 license, which means users can do whatever they want to with the engine without having to worry about any legal or license entanglements.
And when we talk about 3D engines, most of the time we do talk about games and gamings, but the usage is beyond that. Can you also talk about the whole, when we talk about these engines, the role that they play, of course, in gaming and beyond gaming. And then we can also talk about why we need open source 3D engine there.
So for gaming, engines are generally how you produce a lot of your content and how you design, basically implement your design for your games. There are several commercial engines, and there are a couple of larger open source engines, with O3D being one of them, as well as several smaller, more niched engines as well. And then as far as beyond games, what we have found is that O3DE is becoming popular in the robotics and simulation space. And the reason for that is, it has a great renderer. It has all the, full design tools. You can use a compiler, or you can choose not to use a compiler with it. So it's very easy to get up and running quickly. But the number one thing is that we have engine integrations with several tools that are common in robotics.
Now, when it comes to gaming, mostly it is dominated by a lot of proprietary engines. What kind of scope, or when we look at some of these Linux Foundation projects, 2 things happen. One is that, of course, there is proprietary market, but then there is also, we cannot just live in the proprietary world. So we need to create alternative for those who want to use. That is from our side. And second is that there is a demand. So we have to respond, react to that, and create it. So what was the case with Open 3D Foundation there?
The Open 3D Foundation, actually the AWS essentially donated the O3DE code to the Linux Foundation, which then created the Open3D Foundation. And the reason for that is, especially with commercial offerings, there are constantly changing licensing. I'm not going to name names, but it's the number one complaint that we've gotten. The second advantage, or the second thing that the foundation's really trying to do is create like a stable kind of environment for people, so they don't have to worry about things changing out from underneath them as well, like you do with some of the commercial engines. So yeah, so that's the licensing is a big one, as well as the feature set. Users, particularly contributors who contribute to the project, have a lot more control over the feature set for projects like O3DE compared to commercial products, which generally focus on features that help them monetize.
Can you talk about what are some of the major trends or patterns that you are seeing in the open source space when it comes to gaming?
So talking with users at various conferences, including GDC and then recently ROSCON, the pattern I'm noticing is one, what I just mentioned, which is the ability to control the features. That's something that users really want more control over. And so open source is letting them do that. They can choose like what to include and not to include due to the modularity in particular of O3DE. The other thing is the licensing changes. So a lot of people are going to open source because licenses have been changing fairly rapidly for commercial projects and has been catching several people, particularly users who don't like create a commercial product, but instead are using it for things like research or for film. Most of the offerings right now are starting to charge for those particular use cases as well. And so O3DE and other open source engines offer an alternative to that.
How do you see the role of Open3D engine in the commercial gaming space? I guess biggies like, Unreal is there, Unity is there, so.
Open3D engine is a AAA game engine. It serves the simulation space because there's an 80% overlap in features between robotic simulation and games. But O3D it has an incredible render, particularly for open source. That's entirely data driven. It has three different ways of being able to script your game, either through visual scripting language, Lua, or through C++. It has physics implementation, both 4 and 5. It has full collision system. It has a full multiplayer as well. It's got just about everything you need from a modern game engine to create a AAA game.
Yes, it is capable of doing that, but is there any use where you do see that? Yeah, there are either product companies. I mean, very good example, Blender. It's an open source, but it is used by at a commercial space. It's actually better than a lot of proprietary out there. So if you can share some use cases or just the usage, that would be great.
I can talk about a couple. We have Carbonated, who is a member of the foundation, and they announced an iOS and Android very high quality game that will be coming out sometime soon. I don't have an exact release date for it. I've seen the game; it looks amazing, but that is what you would expect from a high-end mobile experience for iOS and Android. Like that is what that game is, and also. You have, on the non-gaming side, we have a member company as well called Robotech.ai, and they're doing high quality and high fidelity simulations for like mining, agricultural, and warehouses as well. So those are the two main visible, because you can look both of them up online and get information and details about each one. And we are, have other companies that are investigating O3DE now for their pipelines for games and robotics and simulation. We consider each one equal in terms of importance to O3DE.
Since you mentioned some of these companies and members, can you also talk about when you look at the foundation, what is it comprised of? What kind of folks are members of this organization?
Our premier members are AWS and Huawei. We're working on getting a few more in there. And then for general members, we have companies like Red Hat, Robotech.ai. We also have universities like RIT also involved. So not just to name a few of the members that are involved. I would say Robotech.ai, AWS, and Huawei tend to be the most prolific when it comes to contributing to the project.
For the sake of viewers, we do know about a lot of proprietary game engine, but are there other open source, 3D
Yes.
either engines or foundation? And if yes, how are you folks different from them?
Godot, like for instance, is an example of a very popular open source game engine. How we are different is we are more scaled for AAA games. Godot games tend to be in the a little bit more how's it niched, but they are slowly growing out of that, and their render is getting better. Like every month, I see improvements there. But and so how we are different is that just the when we had the concept of O3DE, when it was being created, it was meant to be high fidelity, high performance. AAA games was its target in the game space, and then we got a lot of interest in robotics, and so we started investigating that. And then we started adding the pillar of robotics and a lot of features, that robotics needed as well. So we are the only open source game engine, as far as I'm aware, that fully supports robotic workloads.
You folks recently launched 24.9.0 release. Talk a bit about what was new, what is new in this release.
So the O3DE Foundation recently launched 24.9.0, actually on October 9th of 2024. The features included were full mobile support. So we actually support a full mobile pipeline from beginning to end, and Carbonated has been proofing that out. We have improved performance across the board, particularly in the editor. We've got improved the installation experience. So most users should be able to get up and running within 20 minutes from downloading O3DE. Ability to author projects without a code compiler. This was a much requested feature throughout 2023 and 2024, so that is finally in. And the ability to import Gazebo assets, with Gazebo being one of the more popular robotics simulation tools. And O3D can now import those assets easily.
We are, it's November, so we're almost at the end of the year. You folks just announced this release. So, but I'm still tempted to ask, what else is in your pipeline? What are the things that you folks are working on? What are the things we can expect from the foundation, from the engine in 2025?
So for 2025, there is going to be a focus on improving performance continually. We are also, as part of the foundation, we are implementing a particle engine. So also a water simulation, looking into something that was requested a lot actually at the recent ROSCON, which is fluid dynamic simulation. And then there's also continued ease of use. So for the next release, one of the themes that I'm proposing is that we make it focus on like the first 20 minutes user experience and improve that as much as possible so that users don't hit pain points while using the kind of golden path of the engine.
Joe, thank you so much for taking time out today to talk about the foundation, talk about the game engine, and also talk about how it's ready, not ready, it's for commercial implementation of AAA games. That's great. Thanks for all those great insights, and I'd love to have you folks back on the show whenever there is new update. But I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.